Good evening, everybody, and a warm welcome to our live streaming Stations of the Cross from the Catholic Church here, Our Lady in St. George, Walthamstow. And a warm welcome to you all as well. Lovely to have you here. Jesus' journey to the cross has vivid echoes and resonances for us in this time of pandemic. Jesus does not abandon us, but walks with us. And along the way, he meets those who offer moments of soothing and generous relief in the midst of the agony and distress. Therefore, the first part of the reflection for each of the stations refers to the scripture passages and other references which inspire them. The second part of each reflection is focused specifically on an element of the COVID-19 pandemic, helping us to bring this to prayer in despair and anguish, joy and hope, and helping us to name some of the characters on this modern Via Dolorosa. The first station, Jesus is condemned to death. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
The high priest questioned Jesus, saying, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus said to him, "I am. And you shall see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven." The high priest tore his robes and said, "What need of witnesses have we now? You have heard the blasphemy. What is your finding?" Their verdict was unanimous. He deserved to die. Some of them started spitting at his face, hitting him and saying, "Play the prophet." The beginning of symptoms of COVID-19 will feel for some like a death sentence. Breathlessness, pneumonia, and the need for a ventilator will be serious and life-threatening. As Jesus is condemned to die, though innocent of any crime charges, we too may feel the injustice of the death of innocent loved ones, family, friends, and family members. It feels harsh, brutal, and inexplicable. We notice too the detail of the gospel. They spat at Jesus' face. Spitting has become a weapon in this pandemic, spitting at police officers, even the National Health Service workers, as a sign of anger or frustration, with the intent to spread the virus. Jesus knows exactly what it is like to be spat at, exactly what it is like to be condemned to die. He walks with us. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. The second station, Jesus carries his cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel of St. John, here is your King, Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" Pilate said, "Shall I crucify your king?" The chief priests answered, "We have no king except Caesar." So at that, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. They then took charge of Jesus, and carrying his own cross, he went out to the place of the skull, or as it is called in Hebrew, Golgotha. Jesus picks up his cross. It would have been a very weighty piece of wood, enough to support a man some feet off the ground. He had already been beaten and had a crown of thorns put on his head. What crosses are we having to carry in these days? The cross of isolation, the cross of living with people who are difficult to live with, the cross of a cramped flat with no garden. What crosses are others carrying? Those who are refugees or homeless, those who have elderly relatives they cannot visit, those who are anxious about money, jobs. Consider for a moment the particular cross that you are carrying in this pandemic. Do you have someone who you can talk to about it? Most certainly, you can talk to Christ in prayer. Jesus knows exactly what it is like to carry your cross. Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est. Where there is charity and love, God is there.
Third station, Jesus falls for the first time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you because by your holy cross you have redeemed. From the prophet Isaiah. For my part, I made no resistance, neither did I turn away. I offered my back to those who struck me, my cheeks to those who tore at my beard. I did not cover my face against insult and spittle. It is not surprising that Jesus falls over. The cross is heavy. He is weakened by loss of blood. And the midday heat in Jerusalem is fierce. The ground is uneven, and the crowds press around. It will not be surprising if we also fall over in these pressured days. A moment when we snap at someone we are sharing a house with. A moment where we lose patience in a supermarket queue. A moment where we are reduced to tears by sheer helplessness we feel in the face of illness, death, and confinement. As we lie on the ground, literally and metaphorically, we can look to our side and see that Jesus is there with us on the floor, weighed down. Together with Jesus, we find extra strength to get up and carry on.
Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it falls.
causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. While there, when they crucify my Lord. Fourth station, Jesus meets his mother Mary. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you because by your holy cross you came. From Gospel according to St. John. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother and his mother's sister, Mary, the wife of Cleophas, and Mary of Magdala. See his mother, the disciple, whom he loved, and he said to the disciple, "This is your mother." And from that hour, the disciple took her into his home. How much mothers suffer when they see their children suffer. It is hard to imagine the grief and distress of Mary as she sees what is happening to Jesus. As in COVID-19 wards, in hospitals which mothers cannot enter, while their children struggle for breath, how deeply the pain and sorrows are felt. For children too, who cannot visit their parents at home or in hospital, there is great stress and distress. Jesus understands, Mary understands. And Jesus shows his care for Mary as he entrusts her to John, the beloved disciple. It does not take away the fear and pain. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Fifth station, Simon of Cyrene helps Jesus. We adore you, O Christ, and we
by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel of St. Luke. As they were leading him away, they seized on a man, Simon from Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, and made him shoulder the cross and carry it behind Jesus. Simon is pulled from the crowd and enlisted to help Jesus. Consider the crosses that we are carrying and that others are carrying, that we reflected on earlier. Think about what it means to help another person to carry their cross. It could be as simple as a smile and a warm hello to the neighbor in isolation. A thank you to the supermarket assistant regulating the queue at the shop door, or the person at the checkout, carrying their crosses of abuse as people are impatient with waiting or with missing goods. Could be leaving a thank you card with the bins as the bin men continue their job. It could be a donation to a food bank, a long phone call to someone with no visitors, or a generous listening ear for someone who is in despair. To pick up the cross of another costs us time, energy, sometimes money, and it transforms us. Somehow, our own crosses diminish when we shoulder the burden of another. Jesus shows us what that looks like, and Simon knows and shows us how we can step in to help. For whom can you be Simon of Cyrene in this pandemic? Who needs your help to carry their cross? Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas, Deus ibi est. Where there is charity and love, God is there. The sixth station, Veronica wipes the face of Jesus. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel of St. Matthew. Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you a drink? When did we see you a stranger and make you welcome? It is for one of the least of my sisters and brothers. You did it to me. What a moment of blessed relief. In the heat, dust, and pain of the journey to Calvary, this is a brief instant of soothing tenderness. Veronica comes from the crowd and wipes the face of Jesus. The image of his face remains on the cloth. In COVID-19 wards, a nurse brings a sip of water to a patient with a dry throat. These are the Veronica moments of relief, kindness, tenderness, and concern. And these moments make all the difference, allowing the fog of pain, loneliness, and sorrow to lift, and offering hope that even in cruel circumstances, love is present. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord?
Seventh station, Jesus falls for the second time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Psalms, down in the dust I lie prostrate. True to your word, revive me. I tell you my ways, and you answer me. Teach me your wishes. I'm melting away for grief. True to your word, raise me up. Again, Jesus falls, lying in the road, tasting the dust, even as the soldiers shout and beat him to stand up to carry on. Again we fall, consumed by grief for a person, frustrated and angry as the death toll rises, and we feel powerless. We fall and we too taste the dust, the bitterness of despair, anguish, and grief. And again, we look to our side we see that Jesus is there. And again, as we see him roughly hauled from the ground and pushed on along the road, as he straggles forward, so too we have the strength to get up and carry on, for we know that Jesus understands.
Jesus, remember me
When you come into your kingdom, Jesus, remember me. When you come into your kingdom. Eighth station, Jesus meets the women of Jerusalem. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you. From Gospel according to St. Luke. Large numbers of people followed him, and women too, who mourned and lamented for him. But Jesus turned to them and said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep rather for yourselves and for your children. The tears of the women streamed down their faces. They are bereft, consumed by the sadness of aching hearts, by the loss of someone so dear. Jesus' response seems very odd. Don't weep for me, but for yourselves and for your children. By the time Luke's gospel was set down in writing, the listeners would know that the Jewish temple at the heart of Jerusalem had been destroyed in 70 AD, with children killed and much of Jerusalem in ruin. Jesus prophesies this, and he shows us that even as he journeys to Calvary, his thoughts are not about himself, but about others. As we weep in these days of pandemic, can we also look beyond our own grief and suffering, our own broken hearts, and weep for those who are alone? Weep for those in countries with few hospitals and scarce medical supplies. Weep for those who have no more tears to cry. Weep knowing that even in his moments of greatest agony, Jesus is thinking about us, consoling us, and grieving with us.
Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas Deus ibi est. Where there is charity and love, God is there. Ninth station, Jesus falls a third time. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the prophet Isaiah, ill-treated and afflicted, he never opened his mouth, like a lamb led to the slaughterhouse. Jesus falls for the third time, and in this moment, he must have wondered if he would ever get up again. Every part of his body is shattered, and even with Simon carrying the cross, Jesus can barely put one foot in front of the other. We see the images of the nurses with faces marked, chafed by the elastic of face masks, exhausted after 12, 14, and 16-hour shifts. We see them slumped in hospital corridors. defeated by the amount of suffering they are witnessing. And we see too the single mother living with 3 children in one room in a London flat, worn down by trying to cope. As we look, perhaps we can make out the faint outline of a person sitting in the corridor with the nurse, or on the floor of the flat with the mother. They don't say anything, just accompany them in their despair. That figure is Christ, fallen for the 3rd time, with us in our moments of greatest despair, understanding exactly how we feel, never leaving us on our own. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Were you there when they crucified my Lord? Oh, sometimes it causes me to tremble, tremble, tremble. Were you there when they crucified my Lord? 10th station, Jesus is stripped of his clothing. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel of St. John. They did him. So they said to one another, instead of dividing it, let's throw dice to decide who is to have it. When Jesus dies on the cross, he is naked. It is the final humiliation. All stripped away as his clothes are stripped away, becoming an object for soldiers to gamble on with the throw of a dice. Christ comes into the world naked on a stable floor. He dies naked on a wooden cross. What sort of king is this? What sort of God is this? Jesus, fully God and fully human, enters our darkest moments, is present at the times when we are humiliated, when we are robbed of dignity. COVID-19 robs us of human contact, of work, of the chance to play freely. COVID-19 strips us back to the barest essentials. What do we find in these moments that look so bleak? We discover and rediscover how much it matters to love and be loved. On the cross, Jesus may be bereft of clothing. He may be stripped and humiliated, but he is never robbed of the greatest garment of all, the essence of who he is, pure love. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
11th station, Jesus is nailed to the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world.
When they reached the place called the Skull, they crucified him and the two criminals, one on his right and the other on his left. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing." Jesus' final words are words of forgiveness. What would we want our final words to be to our loved ones and close friends? When we leave the house to briefly shop or exercise, what are our last words? How do we end the phone call or the online chat? Take a moment to consider if there is someone who needs to hear some fresh final words from you. Words of love, words of peace, words of forgiveness.
Ubi caritas et amor, ubi caritas, Deus ibi est. Where there is charity and love, God is there.
12th station, Jesus dies on the cross. We adore you, O Christ, and we praise you.
Because by the Holy Cross has redeemed the world.
From the Gospel according to St. Luke. It was now about the 6th hour, and the sun's light failed, so that darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour. The veil of the sanctuary was torn right down the middle. Jesus cried out in a loud voice, saying, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." With these words, he breathed his last. The death of Jesus Christ transforms the very fact of death forever. As we pray in the funeral mass, death is life changed but not ended. But for some days, months, or even years, this truth of faith does not take away the raw anguish of grief at the loss of a close friend, parent, or child. Our aching heart, our despairing cry, our sense of radical emptiness and loss. By now, we all know people who have died from coronavirus. Very often, no words adequately express how we feel. So, the open arms of the crucified Christ can be seen as God's embrace of all that is most raw and difficult as we grieve. And for as long as we need, we can simply allow ourselves to be held in that embrace, silently, with pure love. Because you have redeemed the world.
From the Gospel of St. John. Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, though a secret one because he was afraid of the Jews, asked Pilate to let him remove the body of Jesus. Pilate gave permission, so they came and took it away. Nicodemus came as well, and he brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, weighing about 100 pounds. They took the body of Jesus and bound it in linen cloths with the spices. following the Jewish burial custom. There are so many people. Pray for those who will do that for us. The nurses who wash the body and carefully prepare it. The undertakers who will wrap it in a shroud.